The kitchen was silent, except for the slow drip of marinara sauce cooling in the pan. My hands were shaking as I stirred it, like always, just the way he liked it. Upstairs I heard him laugh. Her laugh echoed right after. My heart didn't break, it hardened. I made his dinner, kissed him goodnight, and smiled through every lie. Tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. You're not going to want to miss this. I still remember the feel of the fairground dirt under my shoes. It clung to the hem of my jeans, brown dust settling into the seams like tiny reminders of every Saturday we spent there. That's where it all started. Wilsco. Back then, it was just a table, a few jars of homemade preserves, and a dream that was mostly mine. "Smile, Maggie," Thomas would say, adjusting his display of soap bars like he was arranging fine art. "You're the face of this thing." But I wasn't. Not really. He was the one shaking hands, laughing with customers, taking all the compliments. I handled the money, the inventory, cleaned up after, ran to the bank, and then I cooked dinner when we got home, my back aching, my hands sticky from syrup and sugar. It was like that for years. Wilsco grew. I gave up my job to handle the books full-time, took out credit cards in my name to pay off supplier delays. I handled every logistical nightmare while Thomas talked branding and market energy to our growing team. Every employee was hired by me, every shipment organized by me, every tax document filed by me. But nobody saw that, not even our kids. I'd walk into a room and the conversation would keep going like I wasn't there. "Mom, can you grab me a soda? Mom, where's my charger?" Never a "thanks, Mom," just assumption. At first, it didn't bother me. Not really. That's how moms are treated, right? You're the oil in the machine, invisible. But without you, nothing works. Then came the office. We moved into a real headquarters 2 years ago. White walls, polished concrete floors, big windows that let in too much sun. Thomas made me sit in the back corner. "It's quieter for you," he said. "You hate all the noise." He gave himself a glass-walled office with views of the downtown skyline. In meetings, I spoke. Nobody listened. Eyes stayed fixed on him. Even when I handed out quarterly reports with my name signed at the bottom, people would say, "Thanks, Tom. Great work." He never corrected them. And I just kept making dinner, kept folding his socks the way he liked, kept showing up at every board meeting, every vendor call, every employee dispute, kept nodding while he took the credit. It wasn't until the annual retreat last fall that something in me began to rot. We were in Aspen, a rented chalet, big fireplace, too much wine. That night we sat around the fire pit. Everyone was drunk, laughing. And Thomas stood up, his tumbler raised. "To the heart and soul of Wilsco," he said, eyes gleaming. "To the people who really made it happen." I held my breath. He turned to our head of marketing. "Danielle, you're a genius. Couldn't have done it without you." To the VP of operations. "Kyle, your logistics saved us in Q3. To the lead designer. Laura, your labels are what made this brand sexy." And then he sat down. That was it. No Maggie. No my wife. No the woman who worked hours a week for 2 decades to make this happen. I smiled anyway, nodded, clinked my glass. Later, I stood in the hallway outside our suite, staring at a framed photo of snow-covered trees. My stomach twisted. My jaw was locked so tight I felt my teeth grind. I didn't cry. I never cried anymore. What was the point? Back home, I reorganized the office schedule, put myself on every client meeting, sat silently through all of them, noticed how no one even looked in my direction unless I was pouring coffee. The only time Thomas even mentioned me at work was when someone asked about the early days. "She helped a bit," he said once, waving his hand like I'd just passed through his memory like a breeze. A bit. I kept thinking about that, and the fact that I knew the password to every account, that every legal document had passed through my hands, that I had notarized half of them myself in our garage back in, that I had signed something once, something big, and he had asked me to do it. Just for facilitation, he'd said. I remembered the exact moment. I was standing at the kitchen island, chicken sizzling behind me. He handed me a pen and a folder. Said he needed my signature fast, something about an investor needing proof of ownership to get the next round going. I signed without reading. The chicken burned that night. I remember the smell more than anything. I didn't sleep at all after Aspen. And the next morning, while Thomas whistled in the bathroom, I went to the attic. I knew exactly where the folder was, Green, thick, labeled legal. I took it down, laid it flat on my bed, and began reading. The truth hit me harder than any slap, any betrayal, any insult he'd ever thrown carelessly my way. He had signed everything over to me. Everything. Not in some symbolic way. Legally. Fully. Without realizing it, or thinking I'd never do anything with it. He'd used me, and now he had no idea what I held. That night, I made lasagna. His favorite. I layered it with ricotta, fresh herbs, and spite. I kissed him goodnight. I smiled through every lie. And the whole time, I could feel it building, like something ancient and wild, awakening in my bones. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. But I was done being invisible. I was done making dinner, done being the oil, done being a bit. I was about to become the storm. There's a quiet kind of rage that lives in repetition. The creak of my office chair as I sat down for the Monday meeting. The click of the conference room door as it shut behind me. The smell of burnt coffee from the break room that no one had cleaned. I used to think these were small, forgettable things. But when you're invisible, the little details are the only ones that notice you back. I had started keeping a notebook. Just small observations, dates, names, who talked over me, who rolled their eyes when I suggested a new inventory system, who praised Thomas for the solution I had whispered to him 15 minutes before. They all thought I didn't see it, that I didn't understand. I understood everything. I sat in the corner of the long glass table that morning, flipping through the printed agenda like I hadn't already rewritten it twice the night before. Across the table, Thomas adjusted his cufflinks, those ridiculous silver ones shaped like tiny bottles of hot sauce. He thought they made him relatable. Beside him, Lauren sat like she belonged there. She was new, 3 weeks in the company and already dressed like a VP. Tight pencil skirt, sky-high heels, designer blouse. Thomas introduced her as our business growth strategist. What the hell that meant, I still wasn't sure. But she had opinions, lots of them. And she shared them with a kind of breathless confidence that came from never being told to wait her turn. I think we need to modernize our brand tone, she said, flipping her sleek black hair over her shoulder. Right now, the Wilsco voice feels tired, old-fashioned. She didn't even glance at me when she said old-fashioned. Thomas nodded like a bobblehead. Exactly what I've been thinking. The team murmured their agreement. I stared at a smear of coffee on the conference table. I'd wiped that exact spot clean the day before. No one noticed. They never noticed. Margaret, Lauren said suddenly, her voice coated in saccharine. You've been here since the beginning, right? What's your take? I looked up slowly, catching her eyes. My take? I said, voice calm, measured. Well, I built the tone of this brand from scratch, from the days we printed labels with a dot matrix printer and glued them on by hand in our basement. So if it feels old-fashioned, it's because it has a soul, not a filter. A beat of silence, then laughter, nervous, uncertain. Thomas cleared his throat. Let's not get stuck in the past, hun. Things evolve. Hanshi, he still called me that in meetings, like I was his assistant, like I was something he owned. My stomach tightened. I kept my face neutral. Lauren smiled like she'd won. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of white wine and my old files spread around me. The kids were out of the house now, off in their own lives, too busy to visit, too distracted to remember the woman who raised them while building a company from scraps. I wondered when exactly I disappeared for them too. Was it when I stopped going to their baseball games because of supplier calls? When I missed parent-teacher night because I had to fly to Portland to negotiate a packaging deal? When I stopped correcting them when they thanked Dad for the vacations I paid for? I kept flipping pages, legal documents, ownership statements, meeting minutes. They all bore my name, not his. I'd forgotten that. Let myself forget. At some point, I had let Thomas rewrite the story, made myself smaller so he could shine. But I remembered now, and what I saw when I looked at Lauren wasn't just a woman trying to rise in a man's world. I wasn't that naive. I saw someone who thought she'd already won, someone who saw me as weak. And Thomas? He saw her as a fresh chapter. I was just the worn-out preface. So the next day, when he called me into his office to show me the brand refresh mock-ups Lauren had done, sleek, cold, nothing like the company we built, I smiled. I nodded. I even said, she's very talented. Because the truth is, it's easier to win when they don't see the fight coming. I left his office and walked down the hallway, heels silent against the laminate floor. Past Danielle, who barely acknowledged me. Kyle, who gave me a clipped nod. None of them knew what I had just found in my attic, what I was starting to remember, what I was planning. But they would, soon. For now, I stayed quiet, because silence, when you own everything, is not weakness, it's strategy. The night Thomas brought her home, I knew. It wasn't the way he said her name. Not exactly. It wasn't even the way his voice changed, though it did, lifting slightly at the end, like a boy trying to impress the new girl in class. It was the way he set the table. Thomas hasn't set a table in 20 years. I came home from the supplier's warehouse, 4 hours on the road, back and forth, and there he was, laying out the cloth napkins we only use for guests. He even lit candles, real ones, not the battery-operated ones I prefer for safety. And the smell, rosemary chicken, my recipe, only slightly overdone. He smiled when I walked in, like everything was normal. "Hey, babe," he said, brushing his hands on a towel. "I made dinner." My heart clenched for a second. A flicker of hope, maybe. A foolish, tiny thing. Then she turned the corner. Lauren, wearing heels in my kitchen, laughing like she owned the air. "I hope you don't mind," she said, her voice light, practiced. "Tom thought it would be nice for us to get to know each other." Tom. She called him Tom. I poured myself a glass of water. My hand trembled, just slightly, enough that I noticed. I clutched the glass a little harder. We sat at the table. She took my seat, at the head. Thomas didn't correct her, didn't even notice. He served her first. I watched her cut the chicken with delicate precision, complimenting the seasoning. "It's Margaret's recipe," Thomas said, chewing like a teenager showing off. "She's always been amazing in the kitchen." He said it like a fun fact, like I was the family dog who knew tricks. I didn't speak much that dinner, just nodded, smiled. And when Lauren started talking about her ideas for the future of the brand, I stared at the spot on the carpet by the pantry, a small pink stain. Merlot, from when I dropped a bottle during a supplier call last year. Nobody noticed then either. "And Tom," she continued, her voice rising, "your leadership has been just incredible. I feel like I've learned so much already. I can't wait to contribute." I turned to her. "That's sweet," I said. "So, what exactly is your title now?" She looked a little caught off guard. "Oh, I'm the strategic growth partner." I raised an eyebrow. "Partner?" Thomas jumped in. "Yeah, babe, I meant to mention, we brought her on as an equity partner. Just a small percentage to get her invested. You know how it is." There it was. The heat that crept up my neck wasn't from the wine. I felt it in my jaw, in the tight curl of my toes inside my flats. I forced my lips into a smile so sharp it could have cut steak. "Oh," I said. "Of course." After dessert, store-bought cheesecake, which Lauren loved. She left. He kissed her cheek at the door. I watched through the reflection in the microwave. He didn't know I was watching. Back in the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, looking pleased with himself. "She's smart, ambitious. I think she's got the kind of vision we need. Danielle's been too rigid lately." He poured another glass of wine, offering it to me. I declined. "You good?" he asked, finally looking at me. I smiled. "Of course. She's impressive." He didn't catch the weight behind my words. He never did. That night I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling fan as it whirred slowly overhead. He snored lightly, one arm flung across the bed like he owned all the space. I didn't cry. Instead, I thought about the contract again, the one Lauren had signed her first day. So eager, so proud. It had been a standard onboarding packet, buried among tax forms and NDAs, all reviewed and approved by me. I remembered the clause. Control of the company rests with the majority shareholder. All decisions final, unless overruled by board majority vote, which does not include advisory partners. Lauren had no board seat. Thomas had no shares. I had everything. Still, I let him sleep soundly. Let him dream whatever dreams men like him dream when they think they're still in control. I curled into the side of the bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and in the dark, I smiled. For the first time in years, I smiled not to please, but to plot. There's something terrifyingly intimate about old paper, the way it smells, the brittle texture when you unfold it, the weight it carries, not just in ink and legal jargon, but in the moments it represents. I was sitting on the floor of our walk-in closet, papers spread out around me like a broken mosaic of a life I barely recognized. It was past midnight. Thomas was asleep, mouth open, light snoring filtering through the cracked door. I had turned off the closet light and used my phone's flashlight instead, the cold glow bouncing off old receipts, contracts, tax documents. I found the folder. Monsieur Wilson, transfer agreements. My hands were trembling. Not with fear, not exactly. It was something deeper, something closer to rage, but colder, calmer. I flipped through page after page. Every signature was mine. Every clause reviewed, approved, and filed under my name. His name? It showed up only twice, both times as a witness, never as an owner. He had handed me the empire and forgotten he did it. He was so sure I'd never do anything with it. Back then, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. Suppliers wouldn't talk to us without guarantees. I had a clean credit score, a CPA license, and a name that looked safe on a dotted line. He'd said, "It's just temporary, Maggie, just to get this deal through." I believed him. I always believed him. But now, as I sat with that folder in my lap, I realized something. Belief is just the mask we put on denial to make it look polite. I closed the folder gently, like tucking in a child for the last time. My knees cracked as I stood up. I walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection. I looked tired. Not tired like a woman who needs sleep. Tired like a woman who has carried too many people for too long and finally feels the weight shifting back. The next morning, I made breakfast. Like always, bacon, eggs, toast, black coffee in his favorite mug, world's okayest boss. I bought it as a joke 12 Christmases ago. He didn't get the joke. He walked into the kitchen, hair still damp from the shower, humming some country song I hated, kissed the top of my head like we were in a movie. "Big day today," he said. "I want to get Lauren into some vendor meetings, show her the ropes." I stirred the eggs and didn't look up. "You think she's ready for that?" He laughed. "She's a natural, Maggie. You'll see. She's a natural. She's a natural." That line echoed in my head all morning, bouncing around the edges of my thoughts as I sat in the back of the boardroom, flipping through vendor profiles while Thomas let Lauren speak over me. Again. By noon, I had made my decision. I emailed our lawyer, not Thomas's friend, my lawyer, the one I kept after the IP battle in, the one he never knew I still worked with. Subject line, Wilsco, immediate review and reorg steps. He replied in less than an hour, "Let's do this." That night I cooked lasagna, homemade, layers of ricotta, spinach, and meat sauce. The house smelled like Sundays used to smell when the kids were little and thought their dad was the hero, when I still pretended I was proud to be his shadow. I watched him take the first bite. He smiled. "God, you're amazing, you know that?" I smiled back. "I know." Later, he went to bed early. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "Meeting with a potential investor. Wanted to look sharp." I stayed up, sat in the living room with the folder in my lap, flipping through the documents again. Ownership, voting rights, termination clauses. I underlined one line in red. The holder of controlling shares maintains sole authority over staff appointments and equity restructuring decisions, barring any contrary provision, which none shall supersede without written amendment. I had the authority. I had the power. And for the first time in 30 years, I had no fear of using it. I turned off the light and climbed into bed, careful not to wake him. He rolled over, arm reaching for me. Didn't open his eyes. "Maggie?" he murmured, barely awake. "You're not mad about Lauren, right?" I didn't answer. I just closed my eyes. Because the truth is, I wasn't mad. I was awake. I woke up before sunrise. Thomas was still snoring, mouth open, arms sprawled across my side of the bed, like he owned it. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the morning birds outside the window, and realized something I hadn't in years. I felt nothing for him. Not hate, not love, just nothing. The kind of emptiness that comes when you finally stop bleeding from a wound you didn't know you had. Downstairs, I brewed coffee. Black, no sugar, just the way I like it when I don't have to pretend I'm still sweet. I sat at the kitchen table. Documents spread out around me. The same table where we used to fold labels by hand, where the kids once spilled juice boxes and Thomas told stories that made them laugh. So much had happened here, and none of it was real anymore. I took out my red pen. I started circling names: the accountant, the legal advisor on retainer, the operations lead, every single person who still thought Thomas ran the show. They'd be replaced, quietly, legally, effectively. I picked up the phone and dialed Joseph Reed. My lawyer, the one Thomas never knew I kept. Joseph, I said, my voice steady. We're moving forward. Today, he didn't ask questions. I've got the restructuring documents ready. You're the sole decision maker per the ownership agreement. We'll begin the personnel transitions and file the board notifications this afternoon. I nodded. And Lauren? He chuckled. She signed a partnership clause that gave her 0 voting rights and a conditional equity stake. We can void it without penalty. Do it. By a.m. I was dressed. Navy blazer, crisp white blouse, hair pulled back. No makeup, no frills. I didn't need decoration. I walked into Wilsco headquarters like a ghost, finally stepping into her own body. Kyle greeted me in the lobby. Morning, Margaret. Did you see the new display layouts? Lauren had some. Schedule a meeting with the department heads, I said. Sharp, executive boardroom. He blinked. All of them? Including Thomas? I nodded. Especially Thomas. Inside my office, I sat at my desk for the first time in months. It still smelled faintly of lavender, the old diffuser I used to refill before Lauren took over that space. I opened my laptop and began typing. A short, precise message to the team. Subject, organizational update, immediate. I kept it simple, professional, final. They filed into the boardroom. Lauren was the last to arrive, in a cream-colored suit and designer heels. She smiled like someone walking into a spa. Thomas followed right behind, holding his coffee and acting like he owned gravity. I stood. I've called this meeting, I said, to clarify the structure of Wilsco as of today. Thomas laughed. Margaret, what is this? We've got the investor call in an hour. I canceled it. He froze. Lauren looked confused. Wait, why? I held up a document. As of this morning, I have executed full authority under the existing ownership agreement. All operational decisions now fall solely under my direction, effective immediately. The silence was deafening. Thomas leaned forward. What are you talking about? This isn't funny. No, it's not, I said. But it is legal. You transferred full ownership to me in... Remember that contract you had me sign? For facilitation? He went pale. That was never reversed. You're not a partner, Tom. You're an employee. A contractor, technically. And Lauren... I turned to her. Your partnership clause is invalid. Your shares were never ratified. You're dismissed. Lauren's face crumpled like wet paper. You can't. I can, I said. And I did. She looked to Thomas for help, but he was frozen, staring at the table. I gathered my papers. You two may collect your personal belongings. You'll receive formal notifications by end of day. No one said a word. I walked out of the boardroom and didn't look back. I felt my pulse steady, my breath slow, my spine straighten. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just in the room. I owned it. That morning, I buttered his toast. I folded the napkin just the way he liked. Triangle, point facing left. Placed his coffee on the right. Black, 1 sugar. Poured orange juice in the tall glass. No pulp. I did it all like I'd done every morning for the past 20 years. Except this time, I wasn't serving a husband. I was feeding an employee. Thomas shuffled into the kitchen wearing his usual half-ironed polo and khakis, still smug, still unaware. He dropped into his chair, rubbed his eyes, and groaned like a man burdened by the weight of success. God, I didn't sleep a wink last night. Too much on my mind. Lauren's shaken up. She says she's going to talk to legal. She thinks you made a mistake. I sipped my coffee slowly. The bitterness warmed my chest like armor. She's welcome to, I said. He didn't catch the edge in my voice. He never did. You know, he continued, I've been thinking. Maybe we take a step back from all this restructuring crap. I get it. You were mad. You made your point. But this is our company, Maggie. Let's not burn the house down just because the furniture shifted. I stared at him across the table. My fork hovered over my eggs. Our company? He nodded like a politician caught in a lie he believed if he repeated enough. Yeah, come on, babe. You're not seriously going to let that lawyer manipulate you into thinking you should run the place solo. I mean, let's be honest here. You've always been great with the numbers. But vision, leadership, that's what I bring. That's what built this thing. He said it with such confidence I almost admired it. Almost. Thomas, I said, laying down my fork, you don't bring vision. You bring noise and charm and shortcuts. I built this company with sleepless nights and spreadsheets. Not handshakes and happy hours. He snorted. Jesus, you sound just like Lauren. I smiled. I'm nothing like Lauren. He pushed his plate away, eyes narrowing. So what? You're just gonna run everything yourself now? Freeze me out? You're not frozen out, I said, sipping my coffee again. You're still with the company. As what? He snapped. I leaned in, letting my voice soften just slightly. You're an employee, Tom. Just like everyone else. You'll have a title. You'll get assignments. You'll follow direction. His jaw clenched. You're joking. I'm not. I built this damn thing, he hissed, voice rising. I stared him down. No, we built it. But only one of us kept it standing. Only one of us never left the ground floor. Only one of us stayed when it stopped being fun. He stood up so fast, his chair screeched against the tile. You're out of your mind. No, I said, calm and steady. I'm finally sane. He stormed out of the kitchen. I sat there, alone at the table, and finished my breakfast. Later that day, I walked into the office like a woman wearing her name for the first time. Everyone was quiet, tense. Whispers followed me down the hallway, but no one spoke to me directly. Until Danielle, our head of marketing, stopped me near the break room. She looked nervous, unsure which side to land on. Margaret, is it true? I met her eyes. What have you heard? That you fired Lauren, that you took full control, that Thomas, he's an employee now. Her lips parted. For a second, she looked like she wanted to say something supportive. But fear crept into her expression. I understood. They were used to the old regime, the one where I poured coffee and typed notes, not the one where I signed their paychecks. In my office, I began redlining the team org chart. Out went anyone loyal to Thomas for the wrong reasons, anyone who ignored me in meetings, anyone who smirked when I said something smart, only to repeat it louder 5 minutes later. They were all replaceable. I wasn't. I scheduled meetings, reviewed projects, called in contractors I trusted. Quiet, competent women I'd met at leadership conferences, but never had the authority to hire before. Now I did. And every time I passed a photo on the hallway wall, me and Thomas at our first trade show, him grinning, me holding a box, I thought about burning them all. But I wouldn't. I'd let them hang, let them watch, let them remind every visitor who really built Wilsco. By the end of the week, I had a new executive team. And Thomas? He hadn't shown up to the office since Monday. I didn't call him. He worked for me now. Let him figure it out. I didn't hear from Thomas for 5 days. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive email CCing the team. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels less like absence and more like anticipation. Like a dog hiding under the porch before it comes back snapping. On Friday morning, he showed up. I saw him through the office window, walking up the steps, shoulders back, sunglasses on like armor. He was wearing his best navy blazer, the one he reserved for pitch meetings and golf outings. His mouth was a hard line. He was here to fight. I was ready. He didn't even look at the receptionist, just pushed through the glass doors like he still owned the place. I stood when he entered my office, not because I was intimidated, but because I wanted to meet him eye to eye. Maggie, he said, not sitting. What the hell are you doing? I motioned to the seat across from me. Why don't you tell me what you think I'm doing? You've humiliated me. I didn't blink. How? He threw his arms out. You stripped me of my title. You froze my email. The team doesn't even know if I'm still employed. I walked into this building and my badge didn't work. Because you haven't reported for work, I said evenly. And you no longer hold an executive role. Your badge was tied to executive access. You now have standard employee permissions. His mouth opened like he was going to protest, but no sound came out. I continued. You'll receive a formal onboarding packet for your new role. I've assigned you to product development support. You'll report to Danielle. Danielle? He barked. She's 20 years younger than me. 27, I corrected, and significantly more competent. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him, because he didn't. I can sue, he said, quieter now. You know that, right? I can take this public. I sat down slowly, folded my hands. You can try, but all the documents are clean. Your name's not on the ownership filings, not on the equity grants, not on the board roster. I've made sure of that. Everything is legal. And if you go public, the media loves a woman reclaiming what was hers. He looked like he might cry. Or hit something. Instead, he sat down heavily. Why are you doing this? I let that question hang in the air. Why? Because you made me feel like nothing in my own story. Because you praised interns and side flings while I built an empire behind closed doors? Because you told me I was just better at the small things every time I dared to speak? Because you took credit for every damn success and blamed me for every failure? But instead of saying any of that, I smiled. Because I'm tired, I said. Tired of pretending I don't know how to lead. He looked away. You should go, I added. Danielle will expect you Monday. He left without another word. Later that day, Lauren showed up. She didn't ask to speak with me, just went straight to HR, demanded her files, then left with a dramatic toss of her hair and not a single goodbye to the staff. Good. Let the door hit her. I walked the halls after that, floor by floor, spoke with teams, took questions, asked for feedback, and for the first time, they looked me in the eye when they answered. They saw me, not Mrs. Wilson, not the quiet co-founder, me. By the time I got back to my office, there was a bouquet of flowers on my desk. No card, but I knew. It wasn't from Thomas. It was from someone who saw what had changed. I sat down, looked out at the skyline, and breathed in deep. The silence wasn't anticipation anymore. It was peace. I called the meeting for AM sharp. No vague calendar invite. No drop in if you're available. This was a full executive, all department heads, mandatory attendance meeting, with one clear directive. Attendance required by company leadership and all strategic partners. Conference room A. No exceptions. Thomas tried to reschedule it. He sent Danielle a note the night before saying he had a conflict and would need to push to Friday. Danielle forwarded it to me without comment. I replied with a single sentence. Conflict resolved. Bye. I was in the room. The glass walls caught the morning sun, casting long shadows across the polished table. I stood at the head, arms crossed, the file folder in front of me thick with the last 3 months of documentation. Every transfer, every personnel change, every contract restructured under my authority. The room was nearly full. Lauren arrived at, sleek as always, tailored blazer, heels clicking sharply on the tile. She didn't smile at me, just slid into a chair beside Thomas's usual seat like she was claiming it by default. Thomas walked in at, late, on purpose. He gave a quick, sheepish grin to a few team members, then turned to me with a faux casual nod. Sorry, parking's a nightmare today. No one laughed. I didn't ask him to sit. I began. Thank you all for coming. Today's agenda is brief. We're moving into a new phase of Wilsco, one where visibility, accountability, and actual contribution will determine leadership. I picked up the folder and began handing out documents, one by one. Each person received a packet. All eyes lowered, pages turned. The tension in the room thickened like honey in the cold. Thomas's smile faded as he flipped through his copy. Lauren blinked once, twice, then sat up straighter. This isn't the current org chart. No, I said, evenly. It's the new one. She looked at Thomas. He looked at me. What the hell is this? He muttered. I walked to the screen behind me and clicked the remote. A new slide appeared. Wilsco Executive Leadership, Updated Structure. At the top, CEO, Margaret Wilson. Below that, a clean, stripped-down org chart. Department heads reported directly to me. Thomas's name wasn't listed under leadership. Just once, product development, associate support staff. Lauren's name wasn't there at all. You can't do this, she said, her voice tight. I turned to her calmly. Legally, I can, and I have. As of last week, the filings were submitted to the Secretary of State's office and ratified by our attorney. You signed a partnership agreement that granted you no executive authority. You're not a board member, and you're no longer an employee. Thomas stood. Okay, this is ridiculous. You can't fire us in front of the team. I'm not firing anyone, I said. I'm clarifying status. This meeting is not for debate. It's for orientation. Danielle, bless her, spoke up. So, you really have full control? I nodded once. Yes. No apology. No softness. Not anymore. Thomas's mouth opened again, but I raised a hand. Let me make this crystal clear. The company is moving forward under my leadership. Anyone who chooses not to adapt is free to step away, but the days of backroom deals, side partnerships, and exclusionary decisions are over. Lauren pushed her chair back. This is insane. You're dismissed, I said without looking at her. HR will process your paperwork. She hesitated, then stormed out, heels clacking like gunfire. Thomas didn't follow. He just stared at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years, his mouth slightly open, eyes unreadable. "Margaret, what are you doing?" he asked, quieter this time. "Taking back my name," I said, "and everything that came with it." Then I turned to the team. "If anyone else feels like their time at Wilsco has ended, you're welcome to exit with dignity. If not, we begin again. Today." No one moved. A few heads nodded. One person even clapped, just once, but it was enough. I sat down, picked up my coffee, took a slow sip. The meeting continued, without Thomas, without Lauren, and finally, with me. He didn't come home that night. No call, no message, nothing. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at the empty seat across from me, the one he always slouched in while checking sports scores and ignoring every word I said. For the first time, it wasn't a symbol of absence, it was a symbol of peace. But peace doesn't last long in a world built on imbalance. The next morning, he was waiting for me at the office. Not in the lobby, not in the parking lot. In my office, he was seated in my chair. When I opened the door, he turned slowly, holding a folder, his termination packet. He didn't look angry. He looked lost. "You actually did it," he said quietly. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. "Yes." He stood, walked around the desk, stared at me like I was a stranger in my own skin. "No salary?" he asked, voice raw. "No. You made me an employee," he continued. "Then took the salary, the perks, everything." "Yes." He laughed, sharp, bitter, hollow. "You've been planning this." I didn't deny it. He shook his head. "I built this. I brought in the money, the clients, the name. You were the one who made it work. That was always the deal." "The deal?" I said, stepping closer. "You mean the unspoken agreement that I would sacrifice my time, my career, my life, so you could stand in front of everyone and pretend you did it alone? You were good at that," he said, holding everything together. I nodded. "And now I'm good at taking it back." He sat down on the edge of the desk like the wind had left his body. "I don't have another job lined up," he admitted. "That's not my problem." "God, Maggie." He ran a hand through his hair. "You don't have to do this. You're not like this." "You never knew what I was like," I said, voice flat. "You only knew what I gave you." He looked at the packet again. "And now you're taking it all." "I'm not taking anything. I'm restoring what should have always been mine." He stared at the floor, like it might open and swallow him. I almost pitied him. Almost. But I remembered the dinners I ate alone while he stayed out networking, the ideas I proposed that he repeated louder. The nights he praised other women's ambition while dismissing mine as nagging. He didn't deserve my pity. "Is this revenge?" he asked finally. "No," I said. "This is reality." He stood and walked to the door, hand on the knob. "Where does this leave us?" I didn't answer. He didn't wait for one. The door closed softly behind him. Later that afternoon, HR confirmed his formal demotion had been processed. He would retain a small contractor role. No benefits, no title, no voice. The team adapted quickly. Danielle took over product. Kyle stepped up as interim COO. For the first time, meetings ended on time. Decisions were made collaboratively. Feedback flowed without fear. And clients? They stayed. In fact, one longtime distributor sent a handwritten note, "About damn time." I framed it, hung it right above my desk, where his name used to be. The story broke online at AM Wilsco. CEO Margaret Wilson restructures company, removes former husband from executive role. It was everywhere, LinkedIn, industry blogs, even one of those women in business Instagram accounts with pastel quotes and one-word captions like power. My inbox exploded. Some emails were from shocked acquaintances. "Is this true?" Others were from suppliers I hadn't heard from in years, offering congratulations wrapped in carefully worded professionalism. But most were from women. Women I'd met at conferences who had shaken my hand and whispered, "I hope I'm not doing this alone forever." Women who were assistants, co-founders, background geniuses. Women who had spent their lives being the quiet one who keeps it all together. They weren't whispering anymore. They were cheering. One subject line just said, "You did what we all dream about." Danielle printed that one and taped it to the break room fridge. The atmosphere at Wilsco changed almost overnight. People started knocking on my door, asking for feedback, approval, direction, and not just out of obligation, out of respect. The interns? They started introducing themselves to me on day one. No more pretending I was just Thomas's wife, because now he was just another employee. His first week in his new role was quiet. He showed up at a.m. every day, avoided eye contact with most of the staff, and sat in the open bullpen like everyone else. No private office, no assistant, no special treatment. He didn't speak during meetings unless spoken to. He submitted reports, completed task sheets, got feedback. Danielle was firm with him, polite, professional. She never once acknowledged the former hierarchy. He hated it. I could see it in his posture, the way he curled inward when someone younger explained something he used to pretend to understand, the way he lingered outside my office like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words anymore. Good. Let silence be the sound of his consequences. Lauren, as expected, went full scorched earth. She posted vague but dramatic messages about betrayal in business and watching your back when you give someone your trust. One even had a picture of her walking away from the Wilsco building with a designer bag slung dramatically over one shoulder. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already public, and no one was asking for her side of the story. The article that made the biggest impact came from a small business magazine I hadn't read in years. Headline: "The Woman Behind the Brand Steps Forward. Margaret Wilson's Strategic Coup at Wilsco." They used a picture of me from the early days, me in a flannel shirt, sitting on a folding chair at the farmer's market, holding a clipboard and a pen. No makeup, wind in my hair, focused. Below it, they printed this line: "For years, she was called the glue that held it all together. Now she's finally being called what she is, the foundation." That one made me cry. I hadn't cried in weeks, not since the night I read that contract in the closet. But this wasn't grief. This was release. I framed that article too, hung it next to the distributor's note, let the walls of my office reflect the truth for once. Not his version, mine. They started calling again after the article. First Amanda, then Brian, then Jake, my youngest. Not one of them asked how I was doing. "Mom," Amanda said on the voicemail, "I just wanted to talk, about what's going on. You could have told us." Jake texted, "He says you're being vindictive. Is that true?" Vindictive. That word rang in my head like a low bell. After 30 years of holding my breath so they could thrive, school lunches packed while answering emails, driving to late-night rehearsals after vendor calls, staying up to study tax code so we wouldn't lose our first building, they still saw him as the hero, as the victim. Maybe it wasn't their fault. Thomas had always been louder. He'd been the one at the games, the events, the parent nights. I was behind the spreadsheets, paying the bills, building the walls that kept everything from falling apart. They didn't notice the silence I carried. They never asked where their tuition came from, or why I never missed a payment. I didn't answer their calls. Not yet. I needed time to remember who I was, before I was mom, before I was the wife, before I was the fixer. I needed to remember Margaret, the woman who once read 2 books a week, the woman who dreamed of opening her own accounting firm before marriage turned those dreams into maybe later, the woman who hadn't worn her favorite blue earrings in 10 years because he said they made her look too serious. I found them in the back of the drawer that afternoon. Put them on. Felt something click into place. At the office, things kept moving. The energy had shifted. People asked real questions, took real risks. We launched a new product line without Thomas's approval, and it sold out in hours. He said nothing. He just submitted the monthly report on time. Danielle told me he'd stopped pushing back. He just did what was asked. No charm, no attitude, just quiet compliance. He was shrinking, and I was growing. But still, late at night, when the house was dark and the hum of the fridge was the only sound, I'd feel it. The ghosts. Not of Thomas, not even of Lauren, but of me, the younger version who let herself be erased piece by piece, thinking it was what love looked like. I sat on the couch one night, wine in hand, TV off, and stared at a photo of our family on the bookshelf, all of us smiling at some 4th of July picnic years ago. I'd cooked for 2 days for that event. He took the credit. They never knew. My fingers hovered over Amanda's name on my phone. I didn't press dial. Instead, I whispered to the room, "I did everything for you, every damn thing, and you still saw him." No one answered. But it didn't matter, because I was finally hearing myself. The day the new sign went up, I got to the office at a.m. It was still dark outside. The streets were quiet, just the occasional hum of a delivery truck or a pedestrian with somewhere to be. I parked across the street and sat in the car for a minute, engine off, watching the workers on the scaffolding. They were careful, precise. When the tarp came down, the morning light caught the letters just right. Wilsco by M. Wilson. I stared at it until the sun rose. No more hiding behind initials. No more pretending I was part of something I had built from the foundation up. No more borrowed names. Mine. Inside, the office buzzed with new energy. Danielle had set up a small reception in the lobby. Coffee, pastries, a simple banner that read, "New chapter, same heart." Employees trickled in, wide-eyed and smiling. Some clapped quietly. Others hugged me. Someone brought me a card signed by the entire staff. It said, "Thank you for seeing us and letting us finally see you." At quarter sharp, I walked into the main conference room, where a new executive team was waiting. All women, all over, all sharp, seasoned, and previously overlooked. Some were former assistants. Others had left toxic companies and were ready to lead. We weren't a revolution. We were a return, a reclamation. "This is yours," I told them. "We build it together. No egos, no games, just the work, and the credit where it's earned." Heads nodded, eyes glistened. I saw in them what no one had ever seen in me for decades: fire. Across town, I imagined Thomas sitting at the kitchen table in our house, my house now, reading the news, seeing the photo of the new sign above the building that no longer bore his name. He hadn't shown up to work in a week. Danielle told me he'd submitted his resignation quietly. No meeting, no grand farewell, just a printed letter left on her desk. He was gone. I felt nothing. No triumph, no sorrow, just clarity. The silence I'd lived in for so long was finally replaced with something else: recognition. That afternoon, I stood on the rooftop of the building, coffee in hand, wind pulling at my blazer. The city stretched out in every direction, chaotic and alive. Below, the team was working. Above, the sky was open. And somewhere in between, I had found myself again. Not the wife, not the mother, not the quiet co-founder in the background. Just Margaret, the woman who gave it all and finally took it back. And this time, no one would ever take it from her again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.